This is Dr. Tiffany Lamond with Lamond Wellness, and today I'm going to give you a totally raw video on all of the mistakes that I made on my first solo backpacking trip. The first and most obvious mistake that I made is that my pack was way too heavy. So generally speaking, there's like this rule of it should be about 20% of your body weight or less, and my backpack weighed 44.5 pounds when it was fully loaded with water, food, and all my gear. Now granted, I was starting out, I didn't have all the gear that I would necessarily want. I was trying to use what I had. I was also trying to learn, and boy did I ever learn. So since that time, I have made humongous updates and changes to my gear, and I'm going to make another video about that. So the first thing that I would tell you is that don't run out and buy all totally new gear from the beginning, because it has taken me about 6 months to figure out even just some of the more simple changes so that I'm not wasting a lot of money and buying a lot of gear and then ending up not liking it anyway. So I've talked to a lot of people, I've watched endless amounts of YouTube videos, and I've really just gone through the process of figuring it out for myself. So I don't necessarily think that was a mistake in the most fundamental sense, but overall it did make for a much more difficult hike. The second thing that I would tell you that I made a mistake on, and this is kind of a crazy mistake given the fact that I'm a doctor of physical therapy and this is what I do for a living, but I actually changed up sort of close before the trip the type of shoes that I wear. Now granted, it was the same brand that I had previously worn, or one of the brands that I use a lot, but I tried a new model, and to be fair, on my trip it rained for the entire trip, for 6 days straight. Now I originally planned my trip to be 8 days, and I was quicker than I thought I would be, which was probably part of the reason why my feet got so messed up, which I'm coming to that later. But the shoe situation, my feet were wet the entire time. I had 3 hours of the whole trip where it wasn't raining. Now granted, it didn't rain hard the whole time, but it did rain the entire time except for 3 hours. And during that time I got one view at Preacher's Rock, and that was it for the entire trip. Kind of a subset to mistake number 2 was mistake number 3, is that yes, I do think I had good socks with me, but given the fact that it was raining so hard, I don't think I had enough socks. I was not able to keep my feet dry. My feet were never dry, to be totally honest. So the socks that I had a dry pair for sleeping at night, which was good. So at least at night, my feet were dry. But all day long, I was wearing the same wet socks. So mistake number 4 is probably a controversial one, and I might get in trouble from some people, but my mother was so worried about me going on this trip. She was crying and carrying on, and she begged me to bring a gun, of which I did. So first of all, you do not need a gun on the Appalachian Trail. And second of all, a gun is extremely heavy. Now, I've done it legally. I have a concealed carry permit, and I have all of the legal right to do so. However, I don't need it. Mistake number 5 is I cheaped out on my tent. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I wanted single wall or double wall, and tents can be crazy expensive. I mean, there's tents out there that are $600, $700, $800 for a tent. And so I got this cheaper tent, and to be honest, on that trip I didn't use it, but since then I've used it quite a lot, and the problem with it leaks a little bit. Yeah, so I've definitely upgraded my tent. Mistake number 6 is my water filter. Now granted, the water filter that I had worked really well, and it's a really good quality one. It's a Katadyn, of which I've been pronouncing wrong for like a year, but it was the big pump one, and so I switched it out to a Sawyer squeeze, and to be honest, I've had difficulty with that too. My Sawyer squeeze broke on my 3rd trip, and it broke like in the thickest part of the plastic. I have no idea how it happened. I've duct taped it together, and it's still working because it's after the actual filter, but I actually think I'm going to end up switching to a Katadyn Be Free. So I like the brand Katadyn, but I had this super heavy, super inefficient pump, and I had to, it was such a hassle. Which brings me to mistake number 7, is that I definitely did not like having a water bladder. So for multiple reasons. Every time I had to fill with water, I had to take it out of the pack, and the pack was, was packed full of stuff. So getting it back in was a huge hassle. I actually ran out of water once because you can't see how much you have left. I have no idea how much was in there. And so I'm sucking along and then I sucked it dry. And what if that had happened when I didn't have a water source for like miles and miles? And then the other thing is the water valve kept like flopping around and rubbing in the dirt all the time. So I was constantly like wiping off the dirt. So I definitely have switched up that. Mistake number 8 might be something that you're a little bit surprised about, because initially in the video I was like, I love this tinkle bell, it's so great. But the problem is I have decided that I like hiking in leggings most of the time, and those don't work awesome with leggings because you have to have some sort of zipper in order to get it in and use it without having to expose your bum. So if I'm gonna have to expose my bum anyway, I might as well just squat and not carry the thing. And then, to be perfectly honest, and this is where things are gonna get a little gory, one time I was using that, it wasn't on this trip, but on another trip I was using it, and I don't know what I did wrong. I think again, because it was the leggings and it was kind of pushing up on it, the pee went backwards and like leaked all over my clothes. So I had to take my clothes off, put on my sleeping clothes, do like some trail laundry and let that stuff dry. It was a big old mess. So the tinkle bell has been demoted and I no longer use it. Mistake number 9, I don't know if it's actually a mistake so much as it's just something that I hadn't really considered. So again, I'm gonna get a little gross with you guys. But so when I was hiking, I mean, I wasn't doing like epic miles compared to some hikers, but for someone who's just starting, like if I was starting a through hike and I was averaging 16 and a half miles a day, that's a fair amount of mileage until you kind of build up your body's tolerance to that. And one of the things that happened toward the end is my bum was rubbing kind of raw. I did not see that coming. And I've heard people talk about body glide, and honestly, I assumed it was for things like guys and their nipples with their shirt rubbing, or like the front of your thighs or your inner thighs rubbing together. But, and again, I think it was because I was wet the whole time. I started getting a little raw in, you know, where. But what worked really well was Aquaphor. And Aquaphor turned out to be kind of great for a lot of things. It can help for like, you know, spots that are starting to rub. You can use it for lip balm or face moisturizer because my lips were getting really dry. Obviously, there should be a good hand washing in between all of that. And I have the squeezy tubed kind. Wouldn't necessarily recommend a tub because like your hands are not always as clean as they could be, especially if you're rubbing it where I just described. But as far as the squeeze tube, it's really tiny, and that worked out really well to correct a mistake. Mistake number 10, if I was camping somewhere that didn't have bear cables, I have a really hard time hanging a proper bear bag, which has resulted in me getting a totally different food system, which is called an ursack, because I don't have to hang it if I don't want to. I do hang it sometimes, but if I don't want to, I can tie it around a tree and it's kosher. So I actually have a video of me trying to learn how to hang a bear bag where I get the bag stuck over a stick, and as I'm trying to like pull it down from the tree because it got stuck, I'm pulling it like this, and it comes at like 100 miles an hour and whacks me right here. I had this humongous bruise, big hematoma. I mean, it was inches from hitting me in the face. Honestly, if I hadn't turned my face like this and let out a very loud, profane word, it would have hit me in the face. It was full of rocks. It probably would have knocked my teeth out or like busted up my eye. Anyway, regardless, to add to that whole thing, another camping trip that I went on recently, I was trying to learn again from someone who's like teaches kids how to do it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to hang a bear bag again. And in the process, so she was struggling too, to be fair, because the branch was really high. It was a really crowded site. And so I'm taking this big rock and there's like a rope tied around it. And I go to throw it up and my finger catches on the rope. And no exaggeration, the tree is it was really high. I'm gonna say it was about 30 feet high that way. And I threw the rock about 30 feet that way because I put like max effort into it. And I throw it up really hard and really high, and it caught on my finger and went back and nearly killed someone else. So apparently I'm really dangerous when trying to hang a bear bag. And this girl decided she wanted to give me a trail name, which I have a couple at this point. I have to pick which one I like. She called me Duck and Cover because I was completely dangerous trying to hang a bear bag. So mistake number 12 is some of the food that I brought with me, I don't think I would do it the same way again. Here's an example of one of the things that I would probably not do again. Gluten-free tortillas, yes, they will last forever, which is concerning because tortillas, you can have them in a package for weeks on end and they never mold, which is generally concerning. However, these gluten-free tortillas that I was using, they kind of turned into this like gooey, the best description I can use was like phlegm consistency. And I was like not wanting to eat these. I was trying to put peanut butter on them or cheese sticks and they were just gross. And so I would definitely not do the gluten-free tortillas again. Mistake number 12 was I did not take, this kind of plays into number one, I did not take seriously enough how much it matters your weight. And so I kind of poo-pooed the idea of like what other hikers call gram weenies, where they count like every ounce and every gram and they're trying to cut it and they cut their toothbrushes. I have become that person because what has happened is the hiking has become so much more enjoyable. Now, granted, I want to be comfortable. I want to, have what I need to stay warm. I want to be able to sleep comfortably. I want to be able to have enough food and water. That's obvious. But there's so little that you actually need, and there's so many ways to cut a little weight. When you see my next video where you see how much weight I've cut, you're not going to believe what just little changes have made in order to make my backpacking experience so much more comfortable. And I think I'm going to wrap up this mistake story with lucky number 13, and probably if you've waited till the end and you've watched the whole thing, this is probably the most important one. And I think it's appropriate that it's number 13. So the entire time that I was on trail, I never felt unsafe. I was cautious. So, for example, and this is not the mistake, but the first night it's raining, I'm going to, go to set up my tent, and there's a shelter. I'm at a shelter, and there's only one man there, and I was leery because there was only one man, and I'm a solo female hiker, and I'm not experienced. And the guy is really nice, and he comes up to me and he says, look, I know you're alone, I know you're a woman, but I'm a grandpa, I'm not a weirdo. It is going to pour tonight. You should really sleep in the shelter. And I thought about it, and I decided, okay, I'm going to take the chance. And at that point, I had a gun, so if he really got inappropriate with me, I was prepared. He was great. Everybody was great. There was no problems. But there was one thing that I did that I do feel like I would not do again, and it was the only time I felt unsafe. So here I have hiked like 96 miles, and I'm in the last couple of miles. So what happened is I hiked so many miles, I ended up, my feet were really, really in bad shape. I mean, I had blister with a blister underneath, multiples, and then one of the many blisters I had actually got a third layer deep, and it was deep, and my feet were bad. So what happened is on day 6, I decided I'm gonna wrap this up. So I actually hiked 24 miles, and I had to finish at night. And so it's not the night hiking that bothered me because I've done adventure racing and I've used headlamps, but here's the thing, I've never done it alone. And so here I am, and I'm trying to hike as quick as I can, but and I carried on a decent pace, but 24 miles in a day when you're a beginner is pretty far, especially with the kind of pack that I was carrying. So it did end up becoming nighttime, and so I'm hiking with my headlamp on, and I had this realization. So at this point, I'm probably the closest to civilization that I've been the entire time. And I'm thinking, if I was going to be a crazy weirdo guy that was going to try and attack a woman, this is probably where I would do it because it's the closest to civilization. I can get a car here. So I had that thought in the back of my mind. And then I realized I'm wearing this headlamp, so everyone around that was out could see me, no problem. I'm like a beacon in the night, but I can't see them. I could only see maybe 6-10 feet in front of me, and certainly not clearly. And then in the process of this, I've been very conscientious the whole time, paying attention to the trail and my maps and all of that. And I actually took a wrong turn in the last mile. Granted, I didn't make it very far, but I just had this moment where I was thinking, okay, I'm at the end, I'm close to civilization. I made a wrong turn. People could see me and I couldn't see them. I just felt like this was an unwise decision. And so if I had it to do it over again, I'm not saying I wouldn't night hike, but I don't think I would night hike alone anymore. And I also would be very sure about the trail. So if I ever got to a situation where I felt like I was not sure about the trail, I would definitely find a place to camp for the night. So I hope you guys find, one, maybe a little bit of humor in some of this, but secondly, learn from my mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes, and it wasn't like I didn't do my research and I didn't try and make good decisions, but we all make mistakes and they've helped me moving forward. So thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe or hit the like button or share it with your friends. Thanks. Bye.